bad news travels fast. Queen Agnes learned just a few hours later that her beloved husband had renounced her and proclaimed as his wife and Queen of France the very Ingeborg of Denmark he had once exiled. Now her position was utterly tangled. The loyal wife, crowned in the church, Agnes had become an outlaw queen. The German Moranian dukes couldn't complain about their fate. The head of the family, Berthold IV, was a banner-bearer for the imperial army during the Third Crusade, a respected emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and a man of considerable wealth. His 9 children pursued various careers in the military, the clergy, and the secular realm, while his daughter Hedwig married a Silesian prince and was poised to claim the Polish throne soon. Agnes was the 6th child. She was born in the year 1175 and, according to contemporary accounts, was the most beautiful of all her sisters. Her mother ensured she received a proper education. The girl spoke 5 languages fluently from a young age. This was a wise decision, as the political landscape of Europe was constantly shifting. Thus, Agnes could find her destiny anywhere, but fate led her to France. In the year 1194, King Philip II Augustus was searching for a wife. He was a widower and had been divorced once, 10 years older than Agnes. Such details, of course, didn't bother anyone. After all, he was the king. Preference was given to German princesses, and for good reason. The French monarch sought allies who could help him oppose Richard the Lionheart. He had been in conflict and competition with the King of England for many years. Firstly, because Richard had once spurned his sister Adele, as I've mentioned in another video. Secondly, there were numerous unresolved political and territorial issues. Philip II could only strengthen his influence in Europe through marriage. However, the Hohenstaufen family, to whom the suitors were initially sent, declined the proposal. They were quite put off by the king's strange divorce from the Danish princess. It was a true scandal across Europe. He spent just one wedding night with the girl and sent her away. The Pope supported the claims of the rejected queen, and the Hohenstaufens didn't want to quarrel with the pontiff. The idea of marrying the daughter of the Moranian duke was suggested to the king by Archbishop Guillaume. The girl was 20, renowned for her beauty, and her numerous relatives could, if necessary, support King Philip. And so, King Philip II Augustus of France married the beautiful Agnes of Morania. The young queen immediately fell in love with her husband, gazing at him with admiration. Philip appeared pleased as well. As a mourning gift, he presented his new wife with several castles and fortresses. The rejected wife, Ingeborg, had already turned to Rome seeking intervention and wrote again. Pope Celestine demanded the annulment of Philip and Agnes's marriage, but the king refused. Agnes was pregnant, and the French ruler was eagerly anticipating a son. His eldest, Louis, had extremely poor health, making another heir highly desirable. To Philip's disappointment, Queen Agnes gave birth to a daughter. In the same year, the new Pope Innocent III also demanded the king and queen's divorce. Philip was fully convinced of his righteousness. His divorce from Ingeborg had the support of an assembly of bishops, and he had never lived with his second wife, aside from their one wedding night. Furthermore, his advisors had confirmed a familial connection between the Danish woman and the king's first wife. In other words, the French king was not merely arguing with the Pope. He was defending a perfectly reasonable stance. Moreover, Agnes was pregnant again. But in January of the year 1200, the Pope excommunicated all of France. For someone living in those times, an interdict was a truly terrifying phenomenon. Churches were closed. They could only be opened for the baptism of infants and once on Friday at dawn for a single mass. The dead could not be buried in church cemeteries, and there were no other burial grounds available. Only the sick could receive communion, and priests could hear confessions only outside the church doors. 13 French prelates protested against the papal excommunication, but 6 acknowledged it. Public outrage was growing, as the king's stubbornness regarding some German princess was incomprehensible to most. Yet it was harming everyone else. Agnes gave birth to a son, whom she lovingly named after his father, Philip. Meanwhile, The King of France set out to retrieve his exiled wife and bring her to the royal castle of St. Lednevlins. A message was sent to the Pope stating that the king had repented of his debauchery and would no longer maintain relations with Agnes of Morania. His marriage to Ingeborg was a fiction, and thus, his new marriage was invalid. Naturally, this news was quickly relayed to Agnes. The unfortunate young woman was at a loss for how to behave. She was innocent in all of this. Struggling to hold back tears of anger and despair, Agnes wrote to the king. Though she had little hope, Philip came to see her. He informed her that the Pope was lifting the excommunication and Ingeborg's situation would remain unchanged. The king swore he would no longer have any dealings with the Danish woman. The ruse worked only partially. Pope Innocent III was quickly informed that Philip had merely pretended to return Ingeborg, while in reality, he continued to visit Agnes of Morania. The outraged pontiff threatened the king with another excommunication, and this time, Philip capitulated. The king asked the pope for just one favor: to keep Agnes from being sent away until after she gave birth, as his queen, who was outside the law, was pregnant with their third child. The young woman was allowed to stay in Poissy, surrounded by all her servants and jewels. No one demanded the return of her mourning gift, but her future remained uncertain. Meanwhile, Philip, in full view of everyone, helped Ingeborg onto his horse, tenderly embracing her with his left arm as he personally took her to Étampes. The papal envoy was satisfied. The couple clearly displayed signs of reconciliation. Shocked by this display of unity, Agnes wrote to the king once more, but he did not respond and was in no hurry to visit her. The Duchess of Morania was now a thing of the past. Such a union promised too much trouble. In a state of terrible despair, the queen felt the approach of labor. In the middle of July, she gave birth to a son, Tristan, but died just moments after hearing her child's cry. The youngest son of King Philip lived only a few hours. Even after her death, Agnes was denied royal honors. She was buried in the monastery of St. Corentin rather than in St. Denis, as a true queen would have been. However, the Pope did legitimize the two children she had borne during her marriage to the French king. As for Philip II Augustus, the man for whom Agnes of Morania suffered so greatly, he reigned for another 22 years. He never remarried, and in truth, he never really lived with Ingeborg either.